When you're planning for a big organizational change, there are lots of stakeholders involved, there are lots of different perspectives involved, and it can be hard to keep track of it all from the center command room. And this intervention proposes an alternative. It's called Whole Systems in a Room. It's a really great catalyst for planning change, setting your teams up for success, and making sure that the entire stakeholder arrangement in the organization buys in and becomes part of this change. So the Whole Systems in a Room, or WSR, is an evidence-based intervention based on the work done by Marvin Weisbord on organizational development. And now could be named as the founding father of the Systems in a Room initiative. And what is great and what makes this intervention unique is that it really fosters an inclusive climate when it comes to planning, talking about, and also discussing and having that real dialogue, the courageous conversation about change across stakeholder networks. So it really offers the opportunity to get the right stakeholders in the room, literally, discuss the risks involved, discuss potential losses and potential gains for all the groups, and center on an acceptable degree of risk and a way forward in this transition. So what makes Whole Systems in a Room different from interventions like a pre-mortem? And of course, they're both amazing tools based on scientific evidence. But a pre-mortem is often done on a smaller scale, in a project team, maybe an executive team, maybe you invite some outside stakeholders, but this is something that is done on groups between 10 and 20 stakeholders, and you can also do it with 3, 4. Whole Systems in a Room interventions are often a bit bigger. They start at groups from 15 to 20 to even sometimes 30 stakeholders, depending on how big the change is and how many stakeholders are involved. And all of these stakeholders get into a structured way of dialogue. They're talking about gains, potential losses, opportunities, and what degree of risk is acceptable in planning a change. And of course, when we talk about organizational change, it's essential to talk about the risks involved and how you can develop contingencies for them upfront. And on a human-centric level, what makes Whole Systems in a Room great is that it is one of the best strategies to reduce stakeholder resistance by making sure that everyone is aligned upfront, that everyone is bought in, and that everyone wants to make this change happen for their own benefit or the collective benefit of the organization. Now, before we dive into the practical applications step by step, let's see what format this takes. So usually when we discussed the Whole Systems in a Room approach with a lot of stakeholders that we interviewed for our book, we came across a workshop application that the professionals at ING, a large Dutch financial institution, conducted, where there was a big process change. And they got all the process owners, all the system owners, and the stakeholders who were impacted by that, and the leaders who were driving it in a room. And they workshopped different formats on facilitating that dialogue and making sure that everyone could weigh in on the discussion. What is this change? What is it going to mean for us? How can we plan for risks? What are the opportunities? And in this way, creating this holistic and overarching plan to move forward that is very cross-functional and even cross-departmental. So what is great about Whole Systems in a Room is that it is aimed at overcoming cognitive biases and other barriers in organizational behavior and organizational systems as well. When we look at things like confirmation bias, groupthink, and anchoring, that can all occur because of these small group dynamics, stakeholders that have conversations behind closed doors, leaders that are driving it in a top-down way. And you can mitigate this by bringing those stakeholders into the room and having a structured debate with them about what is the way forward. Now, when you want to implement systems in a room intervention and make this very practical, the great thing is there is not that much of a mandate or a very strict format because it is all about bringing all the right stakeholders in the room and having them there present and having a safe environment in which they can express their concerns, the opportunities that might be there. But of course, there is some structure, which we will walk you through. So you at first want to assemble your system. And this is often overlooked, but the reason that this intervention is so interesting is because these stakeholders, they form your system. The people that work in the change, the process owners, the leaders driving it, the stakeholders involved, different groups from the front line all the way to the back office. This is your system, and you want to get them together. Everyone that is involved, or at least, of course, everyone having enough representatives of the entire change involved. You can't get the whole company in one room. We're aware of that. You want to plan this session, and you want to upfront communicate clear objectives. This is what we're going to do. This is why we're planning this session in the first place. These are the risks and opportunities that we want to sort out. This is the change that is proposed here. When we look at planning, there should already be a rough plan drafted when you start this whole systems in a room intervention as well. Now, you want to make sure that there is enough diverse input, that everyone feels safe to share their point of view, and that there is as much, divergent input from all stakeholders involved. Because only in this way you can shape that holistic picture. And you want to ask them questions like, what are the risks you can see here? What are the opportunities you can see here? How can we collaboratively find them? Make sure that there's an acceptable degree of risk. Make sure that we capture as many opportunities as possible, and make sure that we incorporate all these perspectives. This is what we call harnessing collective intelligence, which is absolutely key here. And when you have that conversation, you can work on mitigation strategies to mitigate risks up front, to make sure that potential roadblocks and red flags can be spotted early on, just like in the pre-mortem, and also capture opportunities, right? What could an organizational change bring in terms of spillover effects that are very positive for certain stakeholders and systems, that can contribute to the narrative, that can contribute to the engagement? The only way to find out is with a broad systems in a room type intervention, where you really set the stage for broad perspectives. And then, of course, you can take, we usually advise half a day up to a day, but sometimes you can even need 2 days for this whole systems in a room intervention. And when you have that, you will want a smaller team that has taken note of all the input to put this together and synthesize it into a plan. This is going to be the outline of your change plan, and it's going to be informed by as many stakeholders as possible. Now, you can see that there is a broad adaptability of the whole systems in the room. You can change the way that you structure this intervention by the nature of the change that you're looking at. So if it's a giant transition or a big transformation, you can involve many more stakeholder groups. If it's smaller, you can do it with smaller teams. And it will always be a good thing. It will always be a positive to have as many different perspectives up front before you start planning, and calculate them into your change plan, then putting the change plan out there and just saying, roll with it. What is there anything that you would like to change? That is why whole systems in the room can shift that. And now, to conclude, this is an intervention that is that doesn't have many rules or mandates. It's really about having that diverse perspective, as I said, but it can definitely be a cornerstone that can help change company culture at large. It can help change the way that people talk about risks, the way that people look at change, the way that people embrace uncertainty, and it can form a robust framework that underlies that and that will help you set the team and the entire organization up for change success. I would say try this one out, and good luck experimenting.